Hello, my name is Joe Kizis. I'm president of Bravada Gold Corporation, and we're in the final stages of a financing for Bravada. As part of that financing, we intend to drill our SF project, an initial drilling program. Investors have asked why drill SF. We have a number of projects that are drill ready, and what was our reasoning for picking SF? The simple answer is that it is an excellent risk to reward ratio, and we will look at that in some detail now. This map shows the location of SF relative to the Battle Mountain Eureka trend and the Northern Nevada Rift trend, and as you can see, both trends go through pretty much the property position. The Battle Mountain Eureka trend hosts some of the best gold deposits, Carlin-style gold deposits in Nevada. And this map shows the area, Pipeline, and Cortez Hills, and now the Gold Rush complex. Those are fabulous Carlin-type systems. They're huge, generally greater than 10 million ounces of contained mineralization at some quite high grades. The other style of mineralization, which is quite a bit younger, the Carlin type systems generally formed around 40 million years ago, give or take 5 million years. And then there was a period of quiescence, and another period of mineralization around 15 million years occurred along the northern Nevada Rift, and that's plus or minus 1 million years. So both styles of mineralization occur in the area. The Buckhorn mine is the younger northern Nevada Rift style. Gold Rush, Pediment, and Pipeline are pretty standard Carlin type systems, just huge. So Bravada is located on the eastern side of the rift and has some of the same host rocks as Gold Rush, and as well as the other deposits. And they're located a mere 6 kilometers away. So let's take a look at Gold Rush, because it's the closest analogy. Gold Rush is currently being developed by Barrick, and this photograph here from the Barrick website just a couple of months ago shows the adits, or the portals going into the underground mine. Their anticipated annual production is around 500,000 ounces per year. Their ore reserves are currently reported as being 1.5 million ounces. The mineral resources in the measured and indicated category add another 9.4 million ounces, and not included, and in fact not reported, were inferred resources, which in previous announcements have been very, very significant, on the order of the current resources that they do report. So let's take a look at some of the details of the geology. One feature that you'll notice from this slide are some great thicknesses of very good grade. So for those of you that are not familiar with looking at English units, take for example the 117 feet of 0.63 ounces per ton, reported sort of in the middle of the screen there. That's about 35 meters of about 20 grams gold. So very, very good grades of mineralization. So as a comparison to our SF project, both projects are located in the Battle Mountain Eureka trend. Of course, they're close to each other, of course. The Gold Rush deposit is on the western edge of the northern Nevada Rift. The eastern Nevada Rift, SF, is located. The Gold Rush deposit is completely blind. It's covered by gravel. That's what that pale yellow color is on the geologic map. In the case of SF, there is low hills. There are low hills that are covered with float. There's not very good exposure, but in sampling some of that float, we get up to over 100 ppb gold in places. So there is a gold system there. Host rocks are the Wenban and Horse Canyon Formation. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So these are the good host rocks for the state, and in particular a part of the Wenban, the unit number 5. The structure is a series of thrust stacks. Those thrusts were formed during a compressive period, and during the relaxation of that compression period at around 40 million years, when those were pulled apart, those became major throughways for gold-bearing fluids. And in fact, those are some of the important ore controls. Alteration, of course, at Gold Rush it doesn't crop out because it's covered by younger rocks. At SF, we see clay and iron after pyrite, which is pretty typical of the outer edges of a Carlin-type system. In this slide, on the lower portion of this slide, we see a cartoon showing the thrusts at Cortez Hills, thrusts at Gold Rush, and thrusts at SF. And then cutting between those are the Northern Nevada Rift, which is cut over top of that earlier stage of mineralization. On the cross section for Gold Rush, what we see is that the mineralization is constrained primarily in two horizons. The larger area is actually been named the unit number 5, and the number 8 is the uppermost unit. There's a little bit of mineralization on that, but it's a bit more patchy. And then some of that actually goes up into the Horse Canyon Formation in places. So what we see at SF, looking at to the area to the right, is that we recognize the wind band formation crops out to the west of where some of our better alteration is at surface. The Horse Canyon Formation is primarily poorly exposed over the rest of the property east of there. And the target is shown there to our proposed RC holes. It's pretty simple. It's start out in the area of the strongest alteration with anomalous gold geochemistry and drill through into the favorable host rocks and cut the low angle structure that we think is probably an important feeder zone. You notice to the east side of that figure, there's a deep drill hole on a competitor's ground. There's anomalous gold associated with dikes, and it's very positive as potential leakage from the system that's actually on our ground. One of the possible reasons that this property hadn't received a great deal of interest previously is because the government mapping had misidentified the rocks on the surface. The Horse Canyon primarily covers most of the ground and actually does look a little bit like the upper plate. However, we have very strong evidence of this being actually the Horse Canyon Formation. The basal portion here is a photograph you can see on the upper slide there. Those black rounded things are phosphate nodules, and that's pretty typical of the lower portion of the Horse Canyon Formation. The silicification here is encouraging. The iron-rich staining on the fractures is encouraging from a gold standpoint. And typically this sort of alteration is quite extensive in rocks that are not particularly good host rocks. Now, the wind band formation itself, the number 8, is exposed on the surface. There's some diagnostic fossils right at the transition to Horse Canyon Formation. But the reason the wind band can be a fabulous host rock is because they have very, very permeable sediments that are carbonate bearing, and so these fluids that come in, they will enter these permeable rocks, and because they're carbonate bearing, they'll have a chemical reaction. So debris flows, such as the lower left hand side, that looks like a fabulous host rock. The low angle cross bedding typically is indicative of some pretty good permeability as well. This photo is looking east in the area of the drill sites. As you can see, it's fairly low rolling hills, easy topography to access. The ground, you can see that there are not very many exposures of outcrop. Lower left shows one of the rare outcrop areas with some pretty interesting iron staining and weak silicification. So, really the question is here, what could you potentially find? If it's an analogy with the Gold Rush and some of the other deposits in these same host rocks, then the upside is quite exciting. And the access is very good, very easy. A couple of drill holes to prove the concept is the reason we're doing this. So the benefit for the shareholders is great upside, and the downside is we will be spending some money, not very much, to explore this ground, and so that to me is a very good risk reward. Very high upside, very low downside.